But there are many tragedies. The first tragedy is the loss of George Floyd. That is incomprehensible, inexcusable, god-awful murder. It's just, it sickens me. It really, to watch that man who is begging for his life while he's incapacitated to be brutally tortured and die. That is, since Rodney King, I think, one of the worst examples of a police officer, and I hesitate to use that word because a police officer should carry a positive connotation, but in this case, someone masquerading as a police officer executing a citizen in our country with almost looking like impunity. Within the legal spectrum of use of force, once there is no resistance, you're no longer legally allowed. And clearly, by any measure, when you're handcuffed, laying on the ground with 4 police officers, and someone is obstructing your airway in this horrible way, and you're begging for your life, you're pleading, you're even asking for your mom, and you got people, civilians, who are begging on your behalf, and those police officers are standing there totally oblivious to that. That is just so outrageous. It's nauseating. I think that many of the people who are demonstrating and protesting and marching, which I support 100%.
Absolutely.
I am a huge advocate of our First Amendment. That's number one.
Yep.
Our founding
First
fathers
Amendment
said,
for a reason.
First and foremost, the single most in order of importance is people got to be able to say what's on their mind. This is a country of free people, and this is an important ideal. You can't have freedom if you don't have a press, a free press, and people have the right to express ideas. I'm in full support of it. And I will tell you this, I honestly believe that the number of bad police officers is less than 1%.
Oh, I'd agree with that.
I think if you look across the country, but the problem is, how do you identify that 1% if you're on the outside looking in? Now let me turn that argument around. I believe the number of bad protesters is probably less than 1%.
Absolutely.
Because you can see in broad daylight tens of thousands of people chanting, making speeches, asking questions, demanding actions, carrying signs, all perfectly legitimate and important parts of the process and of what our country stands for. However, within that group of protesters, how do you identify the ones that are going to shoot a police officer, that are going to ransack a building, that are going to throw a firebomb, that are going to run somebody over? And yet, that small minority of protesters, and I don't even call them protesters, they're the criminal element, just like I don't call them police officers. The criminal element within law enforcement and the criminal element within the crowds are the ones that are getting the attention. If we could move those two small groups of people aside and everyone else comes together, there would be an incredible amount of harmony and a lot of agreement. The criminal justice system is in a transformational period. We live in a society of what I call ubiquitous transparency, because every man, woman, and child, every home and business and building is under electronic surveillance.
Amen.
So you're
Amen.
going to be seen. You can look at it at the highest levels of government. At one time, classified information never got out. It took 100 years or 50 years before you could do a freedom of information. Now, every conversation, everybody who's hired, fired, it gets leaked.
Yep.
There's no such thing as confidential information, and that helps to keep the sunshine, to keep people honest. So we're living in a period of this ubiquitous transparency, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to have accountability, and we are not gonna, if you think you're gonna just hunker down, weather another storm, let the riots quell, let things settle down, if you think you're gonna, offer somebody up as a super sacrificial lamb, and we're just gonna return to this gilded age where everyone trusts you and believes you and love you, you're foolish. You're lying to yourself. We're not. For police officers and for first responders and for any job that carries with it legal authority over other people. Teachers have legal authority over people.
Over students.
Military, prison guards, police officers, judges. I mean, there are many vocations that create legal authority over other people. At the beginning, the hiring process, the screening process needs to try to improve to identify people that maybe have problems. And we've been doing that for many years. It's not a perfect system because you're dealing with the human element. And someone can change. Someone can come into a job with the highest of ideals and beliefs and values and morals, and then over a period of time they can change. So hiring, training, but ongoing accountability. If there's an issue, you hear so much information, and I've heard everything that there were like as many as 9 to 18 prior complaints against this particular officer.
I don't know.
And that none of them were sustained. That's a problem. That's a problem. It's interesting that none of them were sustained. So whatever accountability system existed seems to have been flawed. And the cry from people is that we want something. We want action. We don't want to continue. Don't placate us. Don't pacify us. Don't just promise things that it's going to get better. And I see a lot of hope in leaders in law enforcement across the country coming together and working towards this accountability and recognizing that there are changes that are going to have to be made institutionally, from the way we screen people to the way we train people to the way we enforce the law. And that accountability piece needs to be ongoing. We simply can't just say, you made it through the academy, now you're good for 30 years.